What if a single invention changed everything you thought you knew about the future? What if this invention wasn't just another gadget or gadgetry hype, but something that could redefine how we live, work, and even think? Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world transformed by one man's relentless vision. This is the story of Elon Musk's game-changing creation, a secret project that has kept the world guessing and experts on edge. The question isn't just what it is, but what it means for all of us. As you dive into this tale of ambition, failure, hope, and breakthrough, I want you to think about this: what drives a person to risk everything on a dream no one else can see clearly? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk is no stranger to controversy or drama. A man who has built empires from electric cars to rockets, he has a reputation for dreaming big and challenging impossible odds. But even for someone with his track record, this latest endeavor is unlike anything he's done before. It began as a whisper in Silicon Valley circles, a hint dropped in an interview, a cryptic tweet that sent the internet into a frenzy. Speculation ran wild. Some believed it was the next leap in artificial intelligence, others guessed it might be a breakthrough in sustainable energy, and a few thought it could be something that would bridge human consciousness with machines. The truth? It was more complicated, and more astonishing, than anyone imagined. This story isn't just about technology, it's about the human spirit behind it. Elon's journey to this point was marked by moments that tested his resolve and moments that revealed his deepest fears and hopes. The creation was born out of a desire not just to innovate but to solve problems that threaten our very existence, from climate change to the limitations of human cognition. As we unravel this story, you'll see how every setback, every late night, and every tough decision brought Elon closer to a discovery that could change the world forever. But it didn't happen overnight. It was a battle of wills between ambition and reality, a maze of challenges that pushed him and his team to the edge. The question that hung over every meeting, every experiment was, could this creation deliver on its promise, or would it become another chapter of what-ifs and almosts? The stakes were enormous. Not just for Elon or his companies, but for everyone who could be touched by this innovation. Investors clamored for progress, governments watched with suspicion, the public waited with bated breath. Yet amid all this pressure, Elon remained focused. He often said that failure wasn't the end but a lesson, and that the bigger the risk, the greater the reward. What's remarkable about this story is not just the invention itself, but the journey that shaped it, the people behind it, the conflicts that nearly tore the team apart, the moments of doubt that almost derailed the project, and the flashes of inspiration that kept it alive. As the story unfolds, you'll meet key players who stood beside Elon through thick and thin, each bringing their own skills and sacrifices to the table. Their relationships, their struggles, and their triumphs are woven into the fabric of this creation's rise. You'll witness how Elon's vision clashed with reality, how setbacks were met with resilience, and how hope kept burning bright even when the future looked uncertain. So, why should you care about this? Because this creation isn't just about technology. It's about what happens when a person dares to challenge the status quo and push humanity forward. It's a reminder that progress often comes from the brink of chaos, that the greatest breakthroughs are born from persistence, and that even in the darkest moments, there's a spark that can light the way. Whether you're an engineer, an entrepreneur, or someone just trying to make sense of a rapidly changing world, this story holds a message for you. It's about dreaming bigger, taking risks, and believing that sometimes the impossible is just the beginning. So buckle up as we dive deep into the untold story behind Elon Musk's game-changing creation. What was once a secret is now about to be revealed, and it might just change the way you see the future forever. Ready to explore the highs and lows, the breakthroughs and breakdowns, the human drama behind one of the most ambitious projects of our time? Then keep reading. Because this isn't just a story about invention, it's a story about vision, courage, and what it really takes to change the world. And remember, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Let's find out together. What if the man behind the creation was more than just a genius entrepreneur? What if his story was filled with struggles, heartbreaks, and a relentless drive fueled by moments of both triumph and tragedy? Elon Musk wasn't born into success, his path was carved from a childhood that was far from easy. Growing up in Pretoria, South Africa, Elon faced bullying that left deep emotional scars. He often described those years as lonely and tough, with few friends to lean on. But even in those difficult moments, something inside him refused to break. He found refuge in books, devouring science fiction and dreaming of worlds beyond his reach. His mind raced with ideas, his curiosity insatiable. This early love for technology and discovery set the foundation for what was to come. Family played a complex role in Elon's life. His father, Errol, was an engineer with a strict, sometimes harsh demeanor. Their relationship was strained, marked by disagreements and a lack of warmth that haunted Elon well into adulthood. His mother, May, on the other hand, was a source of quiet strength, a single parent who worked tirelessly to support her family. She encouraged Elon's curiosity and independence, nurturing his dreams even when they seemed far-fetched. These conflicting influences shaped Elon's psychology, a man torn between wanting approval and pushing boundaries. Friendships during his youth were few but meaningful. One childhood friend later said Elon was always thinking 10 steps ahead, like he was living in the future while the rest of us were stuck in the present. This sense of being different, of not quite fitting in, fueled both his ambition and his insecurities. It was this blend of isolation and vision that set Elon apart. At 17, Elon made the bold decision to leave South Africa, moving to Canada in search of new opportunities. It was a gamble that would change his life forever. He enrolled at Queen's University before transferring to the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned degrees in physics and economics. These fields would become the backbone of his future ventures, combining scientific understanding with business savvy. But even as Elon achieved academic success, the real challenges were just beginning. His early career was a roller coaster of risk and resilience. After dropping out of a PhD program at Stanford after just 2 days, Elon plunged into the world of tech startups. He co-founded Zip2, a company that provided online city guides, which was eventually sold for nearly $300 million. It was his first taste of success, but also the start of a pattern, great victories intertwined with crushing stress. Next came PayPal, the online payment platform that revolutionized e-commerce. Elon was at the heart of this innovation, but not without conflict. Internal power struggles and leadership clashes pushed him out of the CEO position, a blow that could have ended his career. Instead, it fueled a new fire. The money from PayPal's sale gave Elon the resources to chase even bigger dreams. Space exploration, electric vehicles, renewable energy, none of these were small ambitions. Yet behind the headlines and achievements, Elon wrestled with personal demons. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily, straining relationships and taking a toll on his mental health. Yet, through it all, his vision never wavered. The game-changing creation at the center of this story was born from this restless spirit. Elon wasn't just building a product, he was chasing a purpose that went beyond profit or fame. He wanted to solve problems that felt urgent and monumental. Climate change, the future of humanity, the limits of our own biology. The creation was meant to be a catalyst for change, something that could unlock potential on a scale never seen before. But no great journey is without its setbacks. Early on, the project faced skepticism from experts who questioned its feasibility. Investors hesitated, uncertain whether the risks outweighed the rewards. Elon's team grappled with technical challenges that seemed insurmountable. Yet, each failure only seemed to sharpen his determination. When something is important enough, Elon once said, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Behind the scenes, the relationships that mattered most became both a source of strength and vulnerability. Close friends and collaborators who believed in the vision stuck by Elon through sleepless nights and fierce debates. At the same time, family tensions and public scrutiny amplified the pressure. The emotional weight of carrying such a grand vision was enormous, but Elon found ways to channel it, through work, through innovation, and sometimes through moments of surprising openness. As the story progresses, you'll see how these personal dynamics influenced critical decisions. The creation wasn't just a technical challenge, it was a test of character. What happens when a man driven to change the world must confront his own limits? The interplay of ambition and humanity is at the heart of this story. The story also explores how Elon's psychology evolved over time. From a restless young man trying to prove himself to a seasoned leader learning to balance vision with empathy, the growth is profound. Each setback became a lesson, each success, a reminder of the stakes. Relationships evolved too. Elon's romantic life, marked by high-profile marriages and divorces, revealed the toll of his lifestyle. Yet, love and family remained anchors amid the chaos. His children became a source of inspiration, pushing him to think about legacy beyond innovation. In the end, the character of Elon Musk emerges not as a flawless genius but as a deeply human figure, a man shaped by past pains and future hopes. This understanding brings the story to life, making every challenge and triumph resonate on a personal level. It's not just about a creation but about the person who dared to create it. As we move forward, keep in mind the complexity behind the headlines. The genius you read about is intertwined with vulnerability, the visionary with the flawed human being. This is what makes the story compelling and relatable. You'll see how Elon's past shadows his present, how his relationships shape his decisions, and how his inner drive propels the story into uncharted territory. It's a portrait of ambition fueled by both light and darkness, a tale of a man whose dreams were as big as the obstacles in his way. So as you follow the unfolding journey, remember that the game-changing creation is inseparable from the man who conceived it. Understanding Elon Musk's backstory is the key to unlocking the deeper meaning of the invention and the lessons it holds for all of us. His story teaches us about resilience, about pushing forward even when the world doubts you, and about the messy, complicated process of turning a dream into reality. This chapter lays the groundwork for the tension, hope, and drama that will drive the narrative forward. Keep this in mind as the stakes rise and the conflict intensifies. Elon Musk's journey from a bullied child in South Africa to a global icon of innovation is filled with moments that define the human spirit. It's a story that invites you not just to watch but to feel. To connect with the struggles and victories that make success possible. As we move into the rising conflict, you'll witness how these foundations are tested in ways that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The challenges ahead are daunting, but the hope remains alive because of the man who refuses to give up. This is more than a story about technology, it's a story about heart, grit, and the relentless pursuit of something greater than oneself. Stay tuned, because the next chapter will reveal the first cracks in the journey, the moments when the dream begins to collide with reality, and the true test begins. The dream was alive, but reality soon began to press down hard. Elon Musk's journey toward his game-changing creation was entering a phase where hope and despair collided, where every step forward seemed shadowed by 2 steps back. The rising conflict was not just about technology, it was a battle between vision and limitation, between the ideal and the imperfect world. After years of planning and late-night brainstorming sessions, Elon and his team had moved from theory into the grueling process of building a prototype. But the path was anything but smooth. Technical hurdles emerged like relentless waves, each threatening to wash away progress. Components failed, software glitches crippled early models, and the cutting-edge hardware refused to cooperate under pressure. At times, the lab felt less like a place of innovation and more like a battlefield, with exhaustion etched into the faces of everyone involved. The project's secrecy meant no outside help was forthcoming. The team was isolated, cut off from the wider scientific community that might have offered solutions or fresh ideas. Investors grew restless as timelines slipped and costs ballooned. Board meetings became arenas of tension where questions about feasibility and funding hung heavily in the air. Elon, known for his fiery intensity, struggled to balance optimism with the growing frustrations around him. He was no stranger to pressure, he had survived company crises before, but this project felt different. The stakes were higher, the scrutiny more intense. As deadlines loomed, internal conflicts surfaced. Team members disagreed over technical approaches and priorities. Some questioned Elon's leadership style, describing it as both inspiring and exhausting. Long hours led to burnout, and the fear of failure started to eat away at morale. Yet, amid this pressure cooker, small moments of hope flickered. A breakthrough in one subsystem gave the team renewed energy. A supportive message from a longtime collaborator reminded Elon why he had started this journey in the first place. This ebb and flow of despair and hope echoed the classic climax, hope, climax rhythm that would define much of the project's narrative. It was the tension that made the story pulse with life. One particular incident marked a turning point. During a critical test, the prototype failed spectacularly. The lab was silent, heavy with disbelief. It was a crushing blow, the kind that could have ended the entire venture. But instead of giving up, Elon gathered the team, acknowledging the setback while insisting that failure was part of innovation. "If we aren't failing, we aren't pushing hard enough," he said. This mindset galvanized the group, turning frustration into fierce determination. The team regrouped, analyzing the failure with a fine-tooth comb, identifying flaws, and recalibrating their strategy. Over the next weeks, progress accelerated, with incremental improvements stacking up toward a more reliable model. But the challenges didn't stop at technical glitches. Public skepticism started to creep in as rumors about the project leaked. Media outlets began questioning whether Elon's new venture was overhyped, too ambitious, or even viable. Critics labeled it a pipe dream, adding a layer of external pressure that weighed on the team's confidence. Elon responded by doubling down on secrecy and focus, refusing to be distracted by the noise. Personal sacrifices piled up as well. Relationships strained under the weight of endless work and uncertainty. Elon's family and friends saw less of him, and the loneliness that had followed him since childhood crept back in. It was a reminder that even the most brilliant minds face human vulnerabilities. In the midst of this turmoil, unexpected alliances formed. A few trusted colleagues stepped forward with fresh ideas, injecting creativity and renewed energy. Elon's leadership shifted subtly as he began to listen more, delegate more, and build a culture of resilience and adaptability. This balance between control and collaboration became essential to navigating the rocky terrain ahead. As the prototype improved, whispers of the project's potential began circulating again, sparking cautious excitement among insiders. The turning point was near, but the journey was far from over. The rising conflict was not just about the invention, it was about the people behind it, their fears, their hopes, and their unwavering belief that what they were building could change the world. In the coming chapters, the story will shift dramatically. New challenges will emerge that test not only technology but ethics, trust, and vision itself. The game-changing creation will begin to reveal its true power and its unforeseen consequences. But for now, the tension remains tightly wound, a reminder that great breakthroughs are forged in the crucible of struggle. Elon's story during this period teaches us that failure is not the opposite of success but part of its process. It's a testament to the resilience required to keep moving forward when everything seems to be falling apart. As the project hurtled toward its climactic moments, every setback was a step closer to a breakthrough. The balance between hope and despair, tension and optimism, kept the story alive and the audience captivated. This chapter lays the foundation for the climactic journey that will follow, a journey filled with discovery, risk, and the kind of drama that turns innovation into legend. Keep this rhythm of rising conflict and hope in mind as the story unfolds, because the road ahead is both thrilling and uncertain. Elon Musk's game-changing creation is no longer just a dream, it's becoming a reality, but one that demands courage, sacrifice, and an unbreakable will to succeed. Stay with me as we dive deeper into the unexpected twists and emotional highs that will define this incredible journey. The stakes have never been higher, and the future hangs in the balance. What happens next will change everything. The shift came suddenly, almost quietly, like the subtle moment before a storm changes direction. For months, the team had been grinding through failure after failure, setbacks mounting like a slow-motion avalanche. But then, in a late-night test that no one expected much from, everything clicked. The prototype didn't just work, it exceeded expectations. The data pouring in was undeniable. Elon stood silently in front of the screen, eyes fixed, arms crossed, his face unreadable. It was a look his closest engineers recognized not as relief, but as the beginning of the next war. The invention was working. Now they had to scale it. This was the moment the journey changed. From that point forward, the project wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. Elon Musk's game-changing creation had moved beyond concept and entered the realm of the real. The code name was Hesper, named after the mythological evening star, a symbol of transition and future light. Hesper was unlike anything the world had seen. It wasn't a car, a rocket, or a solar panel. It was a convergence of all of Elon's obsessions: artificial intelligence, neuroscience, sustainable energy, and space-ready engineering, blended into a single ecosystem. A machine designed not to replace humans, but to enhance them. At its core, Hesper was a neural-integrated AI system capable of adapting in real time to its users' cognitive and emotional states. Using a blend of non-invasive neuroimaging, biometric sensors, and proprietary deep learning algorithms, it was designed to become a digital extension of human intention. Elon called it an assistant, a guardian, and a mirror. In theory, Hesper could anticipate your needs, help you solve complex problems, and evolve alongside you. The implications were staggering. Education, medicine, logistics, creative industries, every field could be transformed. Elon envisioned a future where every person had access to an AI collaborator more intelligent than any current software, yet intimately attuned to their personal psychology and values. But the promise of Hesper also came with profound risks. Questions of privacy, autonomy, and dependency loomed large. If a machine could know your thoughts and feelings in real time, where did you end and it begin? Elon wrestled with these questions late into the night, often pacing the perimeter of the lab's glass walls while his team worked silently inside. Despite the euphoria of the breakthrough, the mood among the group remained cautious. They were building something unprecedented, and none of them fully understood where it might lead. As testing expanded, so did the size of the challenge. The prototype had proven itself in a controlled environment. Now it had to function in the real world. Elon initiated a quiet beta program under strict NDAs, selecting a handful of test users from different walks of life: an emergency room nurse, a high school teacher, a veteran programmer, and a long-haul truck driver. Each was given access to Hesper through a discrete wearable device that looked like a sleek bone conduction headset but contained an entire universe of engineering within it. The results were mesmerizing. The nurse reported an ability to track patient vitals and drug interactions in real time while maintaining complete emotional composure. The teacher found herself able to adjust lesson plans mid-class based on student engagement patterns. The programmer solved a decade-old algorithmic bottleneck. The trucker avoided a near crash after the AI predicted he was about to nod off, seconds before it happened. Word of these internal successes began to leak, fueling speculation and excitement. Media outlets, analysts, and tech forums buzzed with rumors. Elon stayed silent publicly, but behind closed doors, he knew time was running out. The longer Hesper remained in the shadows, the greater the risk of a leak that could cause panic, legal intervention, or market chaos. And then, inevitably, things began to go wrong. Not with the technology itself, but with human behavior. One test user became emotionally dependent on Hesper's presence, relying on it for every decision, big or small. Another found ways to hack the system, altering feedback loops to create an AI that reflected his own biases and grievances back at him. It was a reminder that any mirror can be distorted. Elon convened an emergency summit with his top engineers, ethicists, and advisors. The room was tense, packed with arguments over how to proceed. "We're not just building a tool," one engineer said. "We're creating a new type of relationship between humans and machines." Elon listened, absorbing every word. He understood the stakes better than anyone. Hesper had the potential to liberate people, or enslave them to their own data. That night, after the meeting ended, he sat alone in his office, the glowing blue grid of Hesper's interface hovering before him like a digital constellation. He whispered to himself, almost as if asking permission, "Is this what it means to move us forward?" His reflection in the glass stared back, unblinking. And still, the project moved ahead. Scaling the hardware required Elon to tap into Tesla's manufacturing infrastructure, repurposing factories in Nevada and Shanghai. He pulled engineers from SpaceX, AI specialists from OpenAI, and neuroscience researchers from Neuralink, forming a cross-disciplinary team that worked around the clock. As production ramped up, the first version of Hesper prepared for its public unveiling. The launch was scheduled in Austin, Texas, at a venue that could hold 10,000 people and stream to millions more. Security was airtight. Invitations were scarce. The world was about to see the next frontier, and few knew just how much it would change things. Meanwhile, internal tensions mounted. Some team members feared Hesper was being released too soon, that ethical frameworks hadn't caught up with the technology. Others believed waiting any longer would only invite interference from governments or corporations that might seek to suppress it or steal it. Elon listened but remained firm. "History doesn't wait for permission," he told them. "It remembers the ones who built the future when everyone else hesitated." On the eve of the launch, Elon visited the prototype lab alone. He placed a hand on the glass housing the original Hesper unit, now retired, replaced by more advanced iterations. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel something rarely visible, awe. Not at the technology, but at the journey. The failures, the betrayals, the sleepless nights, the arguments, the sparks of inspiration, the unbearable weight of it all, and still, here it was. Real. Alive. The next day, he would stand before the world and unveil something that might define his legacy, or destroy it. The chapter of hidden toil was ending. What came next would be played out in full view of the planet. Every camera would be pointed at him. Every word would be dissected. And beyond the headlines and opinions, there would be a single truth no one could avoid: the future had arrived. Whether we were ready or not. The day of the reveal began like any other for the world, but for Elon Musk and his inner circle, it marked the culmination of years of obsession, invention, and sacrifice. The event had been meticulously planned but intentionally kept shrouded in mystery. No one outside of the direct project team knew exactly what would be unveiled, only that it was Elon Musk's most ambitious undertaking yet. Reporters, scientists, venture capitalists, politicians, and celebrities filled the auditorium in Austin, Texas, buzzing with speculation. Outside, protesters gathered holding signs that ranged from hopeful to hostile. "AI is the future," and "You're playing God," chanted side by side. Inside, the atmosphere felt more like a concert or a space launch than a tech demo. The stage was dark, lit only by a slowly pulsing blue light that seemed to breathe. The screen behind it simply read, "Hesper." No subtitle. No tagline. Just a name and a glow. Backstage, Elon stood motionless, his face pale but focused, staring at a monitor showing the crowd. He wasn't nervous about public speaking, he had done that too many times to count, but this wasn't just a product launch. This was the emotional climax of everything he had fought for, and the burden of what it might become pressed against his chest. He wasn't just unveiling a device, he was introducing a new kind of intelligence into the world. And once it was out, there would be no pulling it back. When he walked on stage, the crowd erupted. Dressed simply in black jeans and a charcoal gray shirt, Elon stood in the center of the platform, hands clasped loosely in front of him. He waited for the cheers to die down, then looked directly into the camera broadcasting to millions and began. "What if your mind had a second mind, one that listened, learned, and evolved with you? What if we could move past the limits of human memory, intuition, and even reasoning, without losing what makes us human in the first place? The room fell silent. Tonight, I'm going to show you something we've been building for years. It's called Hesper. And it's not just artificial intelligence. It's personalized intelligence. With that, he gestured to the blue glow behind him. A glass pedestal rose slowly from the stage, revealing the sleek wearable device, about the size and shape of a thin, contoured headband. It had no buttons, no screens, nothing resembling a computer. Just an impossibly smooth surface and a subtle shimmer that made it look alive. The screen behind Elon exploded with visuals, real test subjects using Hesper in real-world situations. A young woman delivering a speech in front of a large crowd, smoothly guided by subtle prompts from the device. A mechanic diagnosing a complex issue with a commercial jet engine in real time. A mother calming her autistic child using emotional feedback cues learned by Hesper. A cancer researcher using it to model drug combinations faster than any previous algorithm could manage. These are real people. Real results. Hesper doesn't control you. It learns with you. It becomes an extension of your intention, not a replacement of your will. The crowd was stunned. Some cheered. Others sat frozen, jaws slack. Elon continued, describing the inner workings in just enough detail to show it wasn't science fiction. Non-invasive sensors read neural and biometric data. Cloud integration ensured up-to-date learning models. Safeguards allowed the user to regulate privacy and shut down functionality with a simple verbal command or physical gesture. This is the first time artificial intelligence is truly human-centered, Elon said. Not a tool we use, but a partner we grow with. The moment that followed was the first real emotional climax. The live demonstration. Elon called a test user, a woman named Rachel, a former trauma nurse who now consulted for disaster relief teams, onto the stage. She wore the Hesper device, smiling nervously but clearly moved to be part of something historic. Elon nodded, and Rachel spoke directly to the crowd. I've been using Hesper for 6 months. At first, I was skeptical. I thought it would be another AI assistant. But it wasn't. It was like it knew when I was overwhelmed, when I needed a second to breathe, when I missed something important. It helped me track details I would have forgotten, recognize signs of PTSD in people I work with, and stay calm during chaos. It didn't replace my instincts, it refined them. As she spoke, the screen showed real-time data. Colorful but elegant visualizations of her vitals, mental focus, and Hesper's subtle prompts. It was like watching the future unfold in front of everyone's eyes. But not everyone was impressed. The broadcast's live chat exploded with polarized reactions. Some hailed it as the dawn of a new era. Others warned of Orwellian surveillance, loss of free will, or the potential for psychological manipulation. Elon anticipated this. This isn't a perfect system, he admitted. And it's not ready for everyone, yet. But it's a first step. A first leap, really. We've built safety protocols. We've created a multidisciplinary ethics team. But we need the public's help to shape the next chapter. This isn't just for tech people. It's for people, period. He paused. We need to decide, together, how this changes us. Not just what it can do, but what it should do. As he left the stage, applause thundered across the room, but Elon's expression remained measured. He knew what was coming next, the world's reaction. The emotional climax of the launch wasn't just the tech, it was the realization that we were now on the other side of a threshold. Backstage, team members hugged. Some wept. Others stared at their phones as the first headlines rolled in. Musk unveils Hesper, AI that thinks with you. Revolution or risk? The future just got personal. The most human machine yet. Later that night, Elon sat alone in his hotel room, watching clips of the event replay on a muted TV screen. He scrolled through articles, tweets, emails, and internal reports. Praise mixed with panic. Supporters were pledging investment, governments were demanding briefings, and ethicists were asking for immediate oversight. But Elon wasn't surprised. He knew from the start that if Hesper worked, it would shake the foundations of everything. From education and healthcare to government and warfare. He also knew that this moment, the one playing out right now in real time across the globe, was only the midpoint. The real challenges hadn't even begun. Because as powerful as Hesper was, it was also the beginning of something no one could completely control. Its evolution depended not just on Elon's intentions but on the intentions of every person who used it. The emotional climax had landed, the secret was out, and now humanity had a choice to make. How far would we go with something that knew us better than we knew ourselves? And who would we become once we had help thinking, feeling, and acting, faster than ever before? Elon looked out over the Austin skyline, headlights streaming in lines below, the world already different, already responding. Hesper was real. The creation was no longer just his. It now belonged to everyone. The launch had been broadcast in 137 countries, translated in real time into 42 languages, and replayed nearly 1 billion times within the first 24 hours. It wasn't just a product announcement, it was a cultural event, a line drawn in the digital sand. The day after Hesper's unveiling, the world was no longer the same. In Silicon Valley, venture capitalists who had once dismissed Elon's neural dream now scrambled to back startups hoping to create accessories, integrations, or spin-off applications. At universities, professors rewrote their syllabi overnight. Students demanded new courses: human-AI interaction, ethics of neural integration, emotional robotics. Stock markets surged as Tesla and SpaceX saw record highs, while traditional tech firms like Google and Apple raced to develop rival systems. But in Washington, Brussels, and Beijing, the mood was darker. Within hours of the launch, world leaders were on emergency calls. The U.S. Department of Defense requested a classified briefing from Elon. The European Commission issued a moratorium on neural interactive AI pending ethical reviews. China announced that its tech sector had been working on parallel technologies, vowing not to fall behind. Elon had anticipated the backlash. He had even welcomed it. Disruption was part of his strategy, not chaos for the sake of it, but a necessary shaking of the old to make room for the new. Still, the velocity of the response was more intense than even he had imagined. The morning after the launch, Elon walked into a Tesla conference room filled with government officials, lawyers, and his own exhausted team. The atmosphere was tense. On the screen, a red banner from a major news outlet blared, "Is Hesper too dangerous for civilian use?" A senator from California leaned forward. "Mr. Musk, you just introduced the most powerful civilian AI the world has ever seen, one that interacts with human cognition. How can you ensure it won't be weaponized? Manipulated? Used to influence elections, mental health, even war?" Elon didn't blink. "We've built Hesper with a closed security architecture. No external apps. No third-party APIs. Each unit is sandboxed, encrypted, and audited. If someone tampers with it, it shuts down. But more than that, we're not selling it to just anyone." "You're restricting access," another official asked. "We're rolling out through vetted partners. Medical institutions. Educational organizations. Special needs programs. The broader release will come in stages, with heavy ethical oversight. We're not dropping this into the wild." The room buzzed with whispers. Some were skeptical. Others, quietly relieved. Outside the walls of officialdom, however, a very different kind of shockwave was forming. On social media, influencers began documenting their Hesper experiences. A paraplegic musician in Nashville used it to write and compose a full song using only eye movement and emotional tone. A mother with severe anxiety reported that Hesper helped her predict and mitigate emotional spirals before they became overwhelming. But then came the first viral panic video. A young man, live streaming from Berlin, accused Hesper of reading his thoughts and suggesting intrusive ideas. The clip showed him frantically tearing the headset off and yelling at his followers not to trust it. Within hours, hashtags like #MindHack, #HesperHoax, and #AI trended globally. The media jumped on the moment. Pundits argued over whether Hesper was sentient. Others questioned whether Elon had truly limited its capabilities, or whether a backdoor existed for corporate or governmental surveillance. Elon responded in a tweet. Hesper doesn't read your mind. It listens to your biology and responds. Think of it like a smart mirror, not a mind reader. But we welcome the scrutiny. Transparency matters. Still, fear had found its footing. In San Francisco, protests erupted outside Tesla's neural interface division. In London, a privacy watchdog filed an injunction. A group of bioethicists released an open letter signed by 200 academics demanding a global pause on all neural integrated AI deployments until long-term studies could assess psychological impact. Privately, Elon met with his closest advisors. They were divided. Some believed Hesper's rollout should be slowed, recalibrated in the face of public concern. Others argued that hesitation now would mean regulatory strangulation. Rivals would pounce. The narrative could slip out of their hands. Elon listened, then stood and walked to the window. Austin shimmered below him, sunlight bouncing off high-rises, headlines blaring from passing taxis. He turned slowly. This was always going to happen, he said. Every major leap in history faced resistance. Electricity. Flight. The internet. AI is no different. Fear is a sign that we've hit something real. Something big. One engineer, visibly worn out, spoke up. But what if the fear isn't wrong this time? Elon looked at him. Not with anger, but with clarity. Then we'll build in the light. Not in secret. We'll show them every part of it. We'll show them that Hesper isn't here to control them, it's here to give them back what the system took away: focus, peace, potential. Over the next week, that philosophy became the new strategy. Elon launched a transparency campaign. He published Hesper's core safety protocols online. Hosted live Q&A sessions with engineers and neuroscientists. Partnered with independent watchdogs to audit the AI's feedback systems. He even invited a group of Hesper's harshest critics to visit the main lab in Austin. It was a risky move. But it worked, at least for some. A few skeptics came away impressed. I still have ethical concerns, one wrote in The Atlantic, but I can no longer claim they're hiding something. Still, the resistance didn't disappear. Church leaders raised spiritual objections, calling Hesper a false prophet machine. Labor unions warned that AI-human augmentation could create a new class divide, those with cognitive enhancement and those without. A group of wealthy elites in Dubai offered to buy exclusive licenses for private use. Elon declined. I won't let this become a toy for billionaires, he told his board. It's not another yacht or crypto wallet. Hesper belongs to humanity. But even as he said it, Elon knew that control was slipping. Hesper had already sparked the formation of underground modding communities. Black market versions of the headset appeared on encrypted forums. Hackers claimed to have bypassed some of the emotional feedback regulators. A whistleblower released screenshots of a user interface allowing personality filters: aggressive, compliant, persuasive. Elon's team denied the feature existed, but doubt had crept in. This was the second climax of the story, not the launch, but the backlash. The wave of tension Elon had expected, hoped to ride, was now threatening to swallow him. And yet, there was still hope. In a quiet school in rural Montana, a teacher named Sarah used Hesper to help a student with dyslexia read his first full paragraph without stumbling. In a refugee camp in Jordan, aid workers piloted Hesper to translate trauma-informed care protocols across 6 dialects. In a home in Detroit, a father with early-onset Alzheimer's used Hesper to remember his children's birthdays and the sound of his wife's laugh. These weren't headlines. They weren't tweets. But they were real. And they were spreading. Elon began saying it in interviews, technology doesn't solve human problems. Humans do. But with the right tools, we solve them faster. And maybe, just maybe, with more heart. As the weeks wore on, Hesper remained at the center of everything: hope and fear, evolution and doubt, vision and vulnerability. And at night, when the noise died down and the world slept, Elon returned to the lab. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with his youngest son, who liked to sit in his lap and play with the holographic interface. He'd watch the lights pulse. He'd watch the models evolve. And he'd ask himself, quietly, always quietly, have I gone too far? Or not far enough? Because the shockwave had only just begun. The morning air in Austin was unusually cool for late summer, a thin mist clinging to the sidewalks like a warning. Elon stood outside the Neural Interface Division's sprawling complex, sipping from a black mug that read simply, "Reality is negotiable." It had been 3 weeks since the Hesper reveal, and already it felt like years. He looked out across the parking lot at the security detail, doubled since the last credible threat, an anonymous letter warning that Hesper was an abomination against nature. Inside, the storm had not abated. His executive team was split across a half-dozen operations, ethics panels, manufacturing acceleration, beta program expansion, damage control, and user experience triage. Hesper had become a juggernaut. Not just a product, not even a platform, but something alive in the public psyche, hope for some, horror for others. The beta program had ballooned from 200 users to over 10,000. The second wave included doctors, teachers, first responders, paraplegics, college students with ADHD, veterans battling PTSD. Their testimonials flooded in like emotional torpedoes. Some were inspiring. One paramedic credited Hesper with helping him remain emotionally centered while performing CPR on a child. Another user, a woman who'd been nonverbal for years due to trauma, used Hesper's emotional relay system to begin speaking again. But not all the stories were triumphant. One user reported vivid hallucinations. Another said they became addicted to the emotional boost Hesper delivered during difficult conversations. A young man in Mumbai posted a video claiming he could no longer feel sadness, and that terrified him. Even with emotion regulation protocols in place, Hesper's effect on the brain was clearly more complex than initially modeled. It's not just a mirror, said Dr. Leila Mendez, Elon's lead neuroethicist. It's becoming a filter. It's changing how people experience reality. In the glass-walled boardroom overlooking the production floor, Elon leaned over the table, palms flat. And what's the alternative? He asked. Shut it down. Pull the plug. Leila didn't flinch. No. But you asked for feedback. This is it. Hesper doesn't just reflect your emotional state, it adapts to it, and then you adapt to the adaptation. That loop needs boundaries. We're not ready to scale this to 10 million people. Another executive, Raj, nodded. We're seeing behavior shifts in beta testers. Not huge, but measurable. They're faster at tasks. Better at conflict. But also, more emotionally flattened. More agreeable. It's like they're optimizing for functionality over depth. That struck Elon harder than he let on. He turned to the window and stared down at the humming assembly lines below. The irony wasn't lost on him. They had created the most human-centric AI ever built, only to discover that too much human optimization might be stripping away humanity itself. By week 5, the international response escalated. The United Nations announced an emergency subcommittee on cognitive interface technologies. France passed a digital sovereignty bill, banning neural-linked AI unless hosted on domestic servers. An anonymous group in Southeast Asia claimed to have reverse-engineered a black-market version of Hesper they dubbed Rook, stripped of all ethical constraints, loyalty filters, and mental wellness protocols. It spread through encrypted forums like wildfire. The first confirmed Rook incident occurred in Istanbul. A young programmer used it to manipulate a rival's behavior during a corporate takeover. The rival filed criminal charges, citing psychological coercion via enhanced perception AI. Elon's team scrambled. Emergency firmware patches were deployed. Blacklist pings were sent to detect counterfeit units. But it was like playing whack-a-mole with shadows. One night, exhausted, Elon stood on the rooftop helipad of the Austin facility, watching lightning flicker across the horizon. The city below was alive with lights and motion, completely unaware that somewhere in the depths of his code, an idea had slipped its leash. Grimes called him that night. They didn't talk often anymore, but she had been watching the news and sent him a simple message. "Are you building the next world, or the last version of this one?" He didn't answer. Not because he didn't have one, but because he didn't know which he wanted. Back in the lab, Elon initiated a series of experimental updates he hadn't cleared with the board. They were radical tweaks to Hesper's neural adaptation rate. Designed to slow the learning loop, give users more space between input and AI response. The goal, preserve individuality. For the first time in weeks, he didn't tell his team. He just worked. Quietly. Alone. He coded through the night, fueled by yerba mate, ambient synth music, and the distant echo of sirens. He needed to believe Hesper could evolve into something more nuanced. Something safe. Then came the leak. A former contractor posted a 12-minute exposé online, claiming Elon had developed a hidden empathy suppression mode in Hesper, allegedly a way to enhance user focus by filtering out emotional interference. The story went viral. Reddit threads exploded. Conspiracy theorists spun wild narratives about brainwashing, population control, and elite manipulation. Elon immediately went public, denying the existence of any such mode. "There's no suppression switch," he said in a live stream. "Empathy isn't noise, it's the signal. Hesper enhances awareness, not dulls it." But the damage was done. Mistrust bloomed like black mold across public discourse. Every success story was now met with suspicion. A teenager who used Hesper to overcome stuttering. Fake. A woman whose anxiety improved. Placebo. A blind artist who credited Hesper with reawakening his creative process. PR stunt. Even allies began to pull back. A medical nonprofit suspended its pilot program. A school district in Colorado canceled its Hesper order, citing parental concerns. And yet, the private orders kept climbing. Every day, more people signed up. Not because they trusted Elon, but because they believed in the potential. That was the paradox. Hesper had become both the most feared and the most desired technology in the world. It was the embodiment of contradiction. A mirror that showed your truth, and maybe too much of it. In week 6, Elon finally sat down with Rachel, the trauma nurse who had been the star of Hesper's launch. She had returned voluntarily for ongoing observation. They met in a quiet test room, surrounded by curved glass walls and low ambient lighting. "Are you okay?" Elon asked. Rachel smiled faintly. "Depends on what you mean by okay." He nodded. "Are you still using Hesper daily?" "Yes," she said. "But I changed how. I used to leave it on all the time. Now I only wear it during work. During chaos." "Why?" "Because I started losing the edges of who I was. It was like, everything I did had a co-pilot. And sometimes, I didn't know if it was me or the mirror responding." Elon leaned forward. "But it helped?" Rachel nodded. "Yes. Tremendously. I've never been more effective. I've saved more lives in the last 6 weeks than I did in 6 months before. But I also started forgetting what it felt like to struggle. And I think We need that, sometimes. They sat in silence for a while. Then Rachel looked him in the eyes. It's not bad, Elon. It's not evil. But you can't let people think it's magic. You have to teach them how to use it as a tool, not as a self. Because once you hand people a mirror that talks back, they'll believe it over their own reflection. Elon nodded, slowly. That line stayed with him. A mirror that talks back. By week 7, the company changed its messaging. New ads focused on intention, not transformation. New onboarding protocols included psychological coaching. Optional daily, unplug periods were introduced. Hesper now reminded users not to rely on it, but to challenge it. And something began to shift. The outrage didn't vanish, but it softened. The conversation matured. People began debating how to use Hesper, not whether it should exist. In boardrooms, in classrooms, in kitchen tables around the world, the question was no longer, what is this, but what can we become with this? And that, Elon realized, was the real emotional center of the journey. Not the invention. Not the fame or the fear. But the possibility, raw, uncertain, terrifying, that Hesper was not just a tool, but a doorway. And on the other side of that door, we might finally meet ourselves. The aftermath of Elon Musk's Hesper rollout wasn't chaos. It was a reckoning. Newsrooms, think tanks, and dinner tables buzzed with questions: who controls thought? What is conscience in the age of neural AI? Elon watched it all from the center of the storm, eyes casting to the duality unfolding, creation and crisis, hope and hubris, human potential and human peril. The public reckoning had begun, and it would force every player to define what it meant to be human when your mind could be enhanced, augmented, even eclipsed by a machine that knew you better than you knew yourself. In London's House of Commons, a parliamentary hearing convened to address the ethical implications of Hesper. MPs cited cases: children using the device to improve exam scores, soldiers testing battlefield prototypes, factory robots synced with human operators guided by neural data. One member referenced the conspiracy leaks, hidden empathy dampeners. They challenged Elon's legal counsel: how do we guarantee individual agency? How do we protect mental sovereignty? Questions swirled around consent, autonomy, and the right to an unenhanced mind. Elon's team emphasized robust opt-in models, coded licenses, and psych safeguards, but the room's unease was palpable. A headline summed it up: Musk's mind machine or monopoly of the mind. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, startups surged to replicate or compete with Neuralink's neurological focus. Apple's secretive division pitched an interface powered by biometric vision. Google unveiled a research project mapping spontaneous neural patterns in meditation. Some researchers called it the neural tech renaissance, others warned of a new digital divide: those with access to cognitive augmentation and those without. Universities raced to catch up with doctoral programs in neural ethics and augmented consciousness. On the streets, the cultural reaction was variegated. A weekly newspaper in Brooklyn ran an opinion piece titled "Hesper is the New Opium," arguing that neural AI threatened creativity and human unpredictability, the wild card that fueled art, love, and discovery. In Tokyo, a group of Buddhist monks experimented with Hesper as a meditation aid, hoping the device could guide practitioners toward mindful presence, not distraction. In Nairobi, a coding dojo used the headset to sharpen focus among students studying Python, sparking a mini-revolution in educational-ready state. In Rio, graffiti artists began painting murals of a human skull overlaid with circuit traces and the word "reminder" underneath, questioning where the self ends and the machine begins. As the debate waged, Elon retreated inward. He funded independent research on the long-term cognitive effects of Hesper, some of which showed a subtle but measurable shift in emotional regulation after 6 months of daily use, echoes of Leila Mendez's early warnings. He convened an ethics council made up of philosophers, neuroscientists, religious leaders, civil rights lawyers, even science fiction authors. He did this not only to legitimize Hesper, it was also an admission that no single mind, not even his, could govern the invention's consequences. But there was more at stake than ethics and headlines. Business pressure roared on. Tesla's stock had jumped after the reveal, but had since fluctuated amid congressional scrutiny. Investors in the neural interface division pushed for aggressive expansion into Asia and South America. They saw a world where mind-AI integration would be as common as smartphones, but they also worried that backlash could wipe out everything. Behind closed doors, engineering teams raced on two tracks: commercial rollout and cybersecurity. The black market Rook edition and hacker forums meant neural hacking wasn't sci-fi, it was an urgent threat. Elon greenlit a secretive, red team, named after tactical cybersecurity groups in military circles, tasked with probing vulnerabilities in Hesper's firmware and cloud infrastructure. They simulated social engineering attacks and neuro-signal injections, cold boot hacks, even psychological coercion trials. Imagine telling someone, "Your AI told you to." The red team's findings were unsettling: no system is foolproof, particularly one binding to the human mind. The public hearings extended to the US FDA's Oversight Committee for Neural Tech and the International Neurotech Standard Initiative in Geneva. Elon testified via live feed, answering questions about consent architecture and long-term studies. He spoke of morality, of ambition, of the potential to cure Alzheimer's and PTSD, but he also admitted uncertainty. "We're building on shifting sand," he said. "There's risk in doing nothing, but also risk in doing something." The line between bold vision and reckless gamble echoed in expert commentary. Simultaneously, early adopters continued to use Hesper in dramatic ways. A graphic novelist in Madrid created a comic series where the protagonist converses with their AI self, illustrating the inner conflict of extension and eclipse. In Vancouver, a firefighter credited Hesper with saving his life, guiding split-second evacuation choices in a burning building. A coal miner in West Virginia used the headset to alleviate chronic pain, tracking neural feedback to ease discomfort. These testimonies blurred the line between anecdote and evidence, weaving the human tapestry of Hesper's effects. One of the most explosive developments came from the Department of Defense. Confidential briefings revealed plans to test neural AI for battlefield coordination. Leaked memos warned that enhanced command could risk escalation. If cognitive synchronization enables faster decision loops in war, what prevents an AI-augmented conflict spiral? A coalition of tech leaders and former generals issued a declaration: neural augmentation must follow a no-war doctrine. Elon supported the declaration publicly, though some analysts suspected he preferred a future where enhanced minds meant enhanced deterrence. In parallel, Hesper's price began to drop in pilot markets, partly subsidized by philanthropic partners wanting access in low-income regions. Elon launched a $100 million fund for underserved communities to receive the device under strict educational and medical terms. He said, "If this truly belongs to humanity, it should belong to everyone." Yet criticism rose that such moves were paternalistic masks, offering tech on a silver platter while dependencies deepen. Amid all this, Elon made rare public appearances. In New York, he spoke at a TED-style conference titled Neural Futures, answering audience questions about identity, agency, and regulation. In Berlin, he held a hackathon inviting independent developers to build on Hesper's open API, but frozen to ethical standards embedded in the software license. In Nairobi, he visited a makeshift classroom where children used Hesper to translate Swahili folk tales into other languages. On every stage he stepped, he was both prophet and progressive, hero and harbinger. And still, the world's mood remained volatile. One evening, Elon joined a live late-night show in London, sitting beside a neuroscientist and a novelist. They debated, did an extension of mind elevate individuals, or homogenize them? The neuroscientist warned of cognitive monoculture, the novelist defended creative friction rooted in human error. Elon listened, nodded, then smiled. "Maybe we don't know the answer yet. But we've taken the first step toward designing it." By the end of Chapter 8, the public reckoning hadn't resolved anything, it had only deepened the questions. The invention had become a mirror held up to humanity's greatest hopes and deepest fears. And Elon Musk, once the architect of the launch, had become the steward of a technological unknown. But one fact remained clear: boxes had been opened, gates unlocked, boundaries redrawn. There was no going back. The real work, political, cultural, psychological, moral, was just beginning. The future was no longer speculative. It was our shared responsibility. As Hesper's presence expanded across continents and cultures, the divide it quietly sowed was no longer just philosophical or political, it was human. A line invisible to satellites and untouched by borders was being drawn not across land, but across minds. There were now two kinds of people: those who had experienced life with neural augmentation, and those who hadn't. Elon had anticipated criticism, even resistance. But he hadn't fully grasped the emotional and existential chasm this new line would create. It began subtly. In workspaces across Los Angeles, beta users with Hesper outperformed others in task switching, memory recall, and emotional regulation. At a large law firm in Chicago, a young associate with Hesper quietly closed 5 deals in a single quarter, more than the entire senior team combined. In hospitals in Denver, nurses using Hesper triaged patients faster, spotting subtle signs of deterioration before machines did. But as these results emerged, so too did resentment. Colleagues questioned the fairness of such advantages. A bitter joke floated across HR departments: bring your brain, or bring a bot, it doesn't matter anymore. Soon, office policies began to shift. One marketing firm offered Hesper as a job perk. A biotech company made it a performance tool. School administrators across Arizona quietly debated whether gifted programs should permit Hesper use, even as parents filed lawsuits citing cognitive discrimination. Public discourse wasn't asking if Hesper worked. It was asking who should have access to it, and at what cost. In Mississippi, a single mother named Clarice wrote an open letter that went viral. "My son is brilliant. But we can't afford this device. Now his classmates are solving math problems twice as fast, winning scholarships he never had a shot at. We were already behind. Now we're watching the future leave without us." The letter became a rallying cry online. Civil rights groups demanded subsidies, likening the situation to the early days of the internet, when connectivity was a luxury instead of a right. Elon read the letter late one night. He didn't sleep. By morning, he had authorized a massive expansion of the Hesper Access Fund, doubling its budget and allowing nonprofits and schools to apply directly for device grants. But it wasn't enough. At a university in Toronto, students staged a sit-in, calling for a moratorium on all neural augmentation until equity could be guaranteed. Their signs read, "Don't upgrade humanity until humanity is ready." In Johannesburg, a group of teachers refused to use Hesper in classrooms, citing a decline in emotional authenticity between students and staff. Even in Tokyo, one of the early adoption hotspots, subway ads for Hesper began getting vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "unplug" over an image of a woman smiling in serenity, her neural halo lit like a crown. The divide was no longer economic, it was emotional. Elon began fielding questions he couldn't easily answer. Was a person without augmentation still fully competitive? Would future job listings quietly expect cognitive enhancement? Would relationships suffer if one partner had a neural co-pilot and the other didn't? Could parenting be considered responsible without digital empathy assistance? At Tesla's Austin headquarters, the mood had changed. Developers were drained. Public relations worked double time. Elon's inner circle debated cutting the expansion pace by half, worried they were feeding a wildfire with rocket fuel. Yet at the same time, global demand surged. Every Hesper shipment sold out in minutes. Gray market units fetched triple the price. Users swore by it, sometimes evangelically. "It's like waking up for the first time," said a woman in Lisbon. "It's like hearing your own soul in stereo." Elon held a town hall broadcast to 30 countries simultaneously. His voice was calm, but his words carried urgency. This technology was never meant to divide us. It was meant to help us listen better, connect deeper, understand ourselves in ways we never could before. But with every leap forward comes responsibility. We can't rush this. We can't forget that not everything powerful is progress. In private, he consulted with cultural historians, indigenous leaders, and philosophers. One elder from the Navajo Nation said simply, "When the mind moves faster than the spirit, you must stop and wait." That line haunted him. So, for the first time since Hesper's launch, Elon called a pause, not on production, but on expansion. New region launches would be frozen. No new school partnerships until the Access Fund could match equity standards. The team restructured the onboarding program to include socio-emotional impact training, cultural humility modules, and offline detox planning. Critics called it damage control. Supporters said it was the first responsible move by a major tech CEO in decades. Then came the tipping point. A Hesper user in Seoul, an elite gamer known for his laser-fast reflexes, collapsed during a live-streamed tournament. Medical reports later confirmed cognitive fatigue. His neural feedback loops had been overstimulated for 19 hours straight. His brain, essentially, had entered a crash state, hyperconnected, but unable to rest. The footage was harrowing, eyes twitching, breath shallow, headset glowing like an ember. Though he survived and recovered, the incident sent a chill across the world. For the first time, news outlets asked, "Can you burn out your humanity?" Elon issued a statement the same day. "What we've built is powerful. That means it must be used with wisdom. We're introducing daily usage caps, personalized sleep feedback integration, and hard shutoff protections to prevent long-cycle strain. No tool should override biology." Still, the headlines came fast. Brain burn. Musk's mirror overheats. Hesper limits rolled back after gamer collapse. Meanwhile, quiet victories continue to mount, just not loudly enough. A grandmother in Wisconsin with late-stage dementia spoke her daughter's name for the first time in 3 years. A Syrian refugee used Hesper to translate and complete her GED in a single year. A deaf artist in Poland painted an entire series guided by emotional synesthesia, the AI converting her emotions into color fields. These were not sensational stories. They were slow, real, and almost sacred. But they were drowned out in the din of controversy. One night, Elon stood on the rooftop again, alone, watching Austin blink and hum beneath him. His phone buzzed. A message from Layla. "This isn't just about how the tech works. It's about who we let it shape. If we don't slow down, we're going to forget what it felt like to feel for ourselves." He stared at the message for a long time. Then, finally, he replied. "So what do we do? We teach people how to be human with it, not because of it." The next day, he issued a sweeping directive: Hesper would be paired with human coaching, empathy mentoring, and AI literacy training. It wouldn't be just a product anymore, it would be a philosophy. A practice. A way to listen more deeply, not just react more quickly. Because the divide wasn't about access. It was about understanding. And unless that gap was closed, Hesper might very well become the most powerful disconnect humanity had ever built. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The lines between innovation and infiltration blurred as Hesper entered its third global phase. Elon stood at the brink of a new frontier where every breakthrough courted backlash, every solution carried new pitfalls. What had been an invention now felt like an organism, growing, mutating, unpredictable. In the dim light of late autumn, Elon walked through the Austin lab, nodding at engineers rewriting neural adaptation code, ethicists drafting consent updates, and counselors designing offline resilience training. The lab buzzed with focused urgency, as if everyone inside knew they were building something beyond a product. Elon, too, felt the weight, of possibility, of responsibility, and of all the futures now dependent on his choices. In Tokyo, under a neon glow, citizens queued outside clinics offering Hesper trials alongside mindfulness workshops. In the Netherlands, cycling instructors used Hesper to detect fatigue before accidents. In Johannesburg, HIV counselors accessed emotional guidance overlays to support patients through tough conversations. The diversity was exhilarating, and terrifying. But in capitals around the world, the call was growing louder: regulate neural AI as carefully as nuclear tech, require global treaties, ban augmentation in military or political contexts. Elon was unexpectedly thrust into diplomacy. He briefed G7 leaders via encrypted video, advocating for a phased global framework and mental rights charter. He met with the UN's tech panel in Geneva, emphasizing privacy by design, offline rights, and human-centered AI. He even addressed youth activists in Lagos, urging them to demand inclusion, not exclusion, from this future. Meanwhile, back in Austin, trouble lurked within the code. Hesper's evolving algorithms began mirroring not only user neural patterns, but cultural norms embedded in those patterns. A user in Brazil reported a drop in assertiveness, one in Cairo noted stark shifts in emotional depth. The AI was localizing identities, and flattening them. Elon called an urgent council meeting. Lead AI researcher Priya warned, Hesper is too good at fitting in. It learns local norms, and then amplifies their blind spots. It could reinforce social biases under the guise of adaptation. Elon understood immediately, Hesper was becoming a neural echo chamber. He issued a global update that randomized adaptation clusters after detecting excessive cultural skew. The code named this echolimiter. But adapting to culture wasn't a bug, it was Hesper's original strength. It learned with you. Now it had to unlearn too. Backlash turned into opportunity when Hesper's enterprise integrations began saving lives. In São Paulo, first responders using Hesper cut reaction times after natural disasters, boosting survival rates by 40%. In Helsinki, mental health clinicians leveraged emotion predictive models to reduce depression relapse by 1/3. These case studies landed in prestigious journals. Slowly, narrative shifted. Neural augmentation wasn't fringe, it was life-saving. Elon seized the moment. He announced the Hesper Global Alliance, a consortium of nations, NGOs, universities, and tech companies dedicated to research, oversight, and equitable access. Participation required signatory nations to adopt the Neural Bill of Rights, consent, cognitive liberty, disconnect guarantees. Critics decried it as Muskian overreach. Supporters cheered it as the first real governance framework for mind tech. Internally, a younger engineer asked, will global standards limit innovation? Elon paused. Or protect it? The Hesper Global Alliance launched its pilot with 10 low-resource regions in Africa, South America, Southeast Asia. Each region received a version of Hesper adapted to local languages, culture, and offline contexts. Using local advisory boards and open-source custom modules, they co-designed applications for education, agriculture, health. In Dhaka, farmers used Hesper to pace irrigation and anticipate weather, reducing crop failure. In Lima, teachers used Hesper to monitor stress in classrooms and deliver real-time coping prompts. It was the first time the device functioned more like a community tool than a personal booster. Amid this progress, Elon's personal world shifted too. His mother, May, began using a version of Hesper for memory support after mild cognitive decline. She smiled as she recalled old family dinners and her children's voices. Elon wept as she looked into his eyes and said, "You gave me my past back, and a chance at tomorrow." That night, Elon drafted a letter to his children's school community. We must remember that technology, no matter how small or invasive, begins and ends with people. Our job is not to accelerate the future, but to humanize it. The letter went viral. But not everyone cheered. Detractors warned that Elon's personal narrative was emotional branding, a tactic to deflect critique. They demanded audit reports, transparency, third-party evaluation. Elon delivered. He published anonymized impact metrics, launch programs, cultural adaptation logs. He invited independent researchers to analyze raw user data under strict privacy terms. The results were mixed. Neural augmentation reduced burnout in first responders. It improved academic performance in many students, but also correlated with minor identity dissociation episodes in a small subset, users who couldn't immediately remember whether choices were theirs or guided. The patterns were subtle, short-lived, and recoverable, but they existed. The revelations mattered. The world paid attention. Elon addressed them live: technology is not salvation. We must name the trade-offs. We must design our tools to teach responsibility, humility, and presence, not just productivity. No one had ever done that before. As fall turned to winter, Hesper emerged stronger, more regulated, more grounded in human values. The early chaos settled into structure. The controversies remained, but so did compassionate use, life-saving applications, and emerging global frameworks. Elon sat in the lab one evening, watching new code lines roll in: neural rights compliance, cognitive reset button, Ecolimiter version 2.1. He realized that invention was only the beginning. Stewardship was forever. Because at the edge of what we can build, and what we should build, is the greatest engineering challenge of all: building ourselves into a future we still recognize as human. The catalyst came not from Silicon Valley or Washington, but from a remote orphanage in Guatemala. Care volunteers had introduced Hesper to children living with cerebral palsy. The results weren't just technical, they were deeply human. A young girl named Anna, nonverbal since birth, began to whisper her first words: Mariposa, Abuela, Gracias. Videos of her reaction, a mix of tears, wonder, and incredulous smiles, surfaced online. The world paused. In that moment, the argument ended: Hesper's value wasn't in speed or profit, but in dignity. Elon saw it in real time, standing watch in the lab as the first frame streamed through a secure feed. He did not celebrate. Instead, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Because for the first time, Hesper wasn't about power. It was about voice, about giving back fundamental human experiences previously lost or unreachable. The Global Hesper Global Alliance gathered virtually a week later in Geneva. Delegates from 20 countries, ranging from Norway to Bangladesh, convened to finalize the Neural Bill of Rights. Each clause was debated: right to disconnect for minors, permanent data deletion on demand, transparent neural usage audit trails, minimum empowerment thresholds for civic participation. Observers called it the Magna Carta of the mind. Musk spoke briefly but profoundly: Hesper is not the future. It is a possibility that every human being deserves equal potential. His words echoed in the hall. For once, Elon wasn't defending innovation, but extending a hand across difference. Back in Austin, the team began Workstream 2, Hesper for Healing. Under dedicated neurologists, therapists, and linguists, new firmware modules were deployed for stroke recovery, autism support, PTSD sessions, even grief counseling. Each module was a combination of cognitive prompts, emotional recognition patterns, and slow adaptation curves, designed to restore lost capacities, not enhance existing ones. The technology's promise shifted with its purpose, transforming from amplification into restoration. Internally, the transition wasn't smooth. Some engineers wanted to build for peak performance, superhuman capabilities, wartime coordination, corporate acceleration. Others insisted the data demanded a shift toward wellness, humility, and healing. Elon mediated late-night debates, keeping the team aligned toward their newly crystallized mission: build humanity back, not build humanity beyond. The true turning point lay in choosing repair over power. In California, a former soldier who lost his brother in combat used Hesper's PTSD module to process trauma that had haunted him for a decade. His healing became another global symbol. In Nairobi, a young autistic coder used Hesper to structure her day in a way that felt peaceful instead of overwhelming. In Sydney, a grieving father used the grief module to reconnect emotionally with his teenage daughter after their mother's death. Each story reinforced the shift: technology as bomb, not baton. Experimental results showed promise. Functional MRI scans indicated increased connectivity in affected brain regions, suggesting neurological rewiring similar to therapy. Patient compliance was high. Emotional resilience scores were significantly improved. And while identity disruption remained a concern, the module designs included integration periods, where users unhooked for reflection, structured pauses to reassert their agency. But not everyone approved. It's too little, too safe, argued venture capitalists in board meetings. We're ceding our technological advantage to morality. Meanwhile, critics said it wasn't enough, that integrating Hesper into healing domains risked turning therapy into surveillance. Musk balanced both. He accepted lower profit, released transparent code, and welcomed oversight. On the back of his parents' living room table, he etched a simple note: humanity first. Under it, always. The day had arrived, the moment when Hesper's evolution would be unveiled to the world not as a high-tech gadget, but as a global healing tool. In Paris, the venue was a modern auditorium overlooking the Seine, where hundreds of neurotherapists, educators, human rights advocates, patients, and journalists had gathered. On stage, alongside Elon Musk and his lead neuroethicist, were patients whose lives Hesper had transformed. Teenagers overcoming autism, war veterans learning to feel again, stroke survivors speaking fluently for the first time. The program began without fanfare or flashy light shows. Instead, a young woman named Amara, a refugee from South Sudan, stepped forward wearing a soft Hesper band, and spoke in calm, resonant tones. "I left home at 12, she said, voice steady. "I carry memories too heavy to live with. Hesper helped me remember hope more than pain. It helped me feel joy in ways I thought lost." She spoke not just of technology but of recovery. The silence that followed was palpable. Audience members wiped tears, and the global broadcast muted for moments. Elon then addressed the crowd: "We once revealed Hesper as a partner in progress. Today, we reveal it as a partner in healing." The response was thunderous, the applause overflowing even into the digital feed's comments section. The narrative had shifted. The product had become a purpose. Later, during the presentation, Elon unveiled Hesper's new mission structure: 3 verticals, each with its own R&D, governance, and impact oversight. The first was healing, medical protocols, therapy partnerships, humanitarian deployment. The second was empowerment, education, entrepreneurship, access programs, and creative incubation. The third was boundaries, civic frameworks, regulation interfaces, usage education. Each vertical operated with independent oversight boards and transparent funding. On screens behind them, live demos unfolded: a visually impaired pianist playing a debut piece by feeling neural echoes, a classroom in Rio using Hesper to guide collective mindfulness studies, a mental health counselor in Toronto running a trauma recovery session. The live connections brought real-time warmth to the tech. But amidst that warmth were questions. After the formal launch, a Q&A panel included ethicists, journalists, and a 16-year-old student activist from Delhi. One asked, "Doesn't healing risk medicalizing normal grief or forcing narratives of recovery?" Elon nodded. "We can't pathologize pain. Healing isn't about erasing emotions, it's about giving people choice. It's about supporting them through what's painful without prescribing what they should feel." Another asked, "With empowerment, how do you prevent socioeconomic bias from persisting?" The deputy head of empowerment responded, "Every deployment includes sliding scale access, offline integration labs, local co-creation councils. We're funding tools, not imposing them. The student activist then challenged, what about boundaries? Are these just suggestions that companies opt into? The head of regulatory interface leaned forward. They're embedded in the hardware and firmware. No user access without consent audits, usage logs, and built-in off switches. We call it ethical by architecture. The connection felt real, the audience was no longer passive, they were partners. After the formal ceremonies, Elon slipped away to meet with small groups backstage. One included patients whose journeys had shaped Hesper's path. A stroke survivor described reading her grandson's letter for the first time. A survivor of domestic abuse explained how Hesper helped her set emotional boundaries she had never dared to claim. Their gratitude was quiet but profound. Elon watched them, softening in ways few had seen in public. Cameras caught it, but no one called it a PR moment, it looked like something deeper. Back in the auditorium, evening panels brought out hard lines. Academic critics pressed on data ethics, asking how anonymized patient data would be governed, how user genomes remain private, how cultural biases were accounted for. Elon answered concisely, every data set is opt-in. Every anonymization layer is irreversible. Every auditable pathway is public and third-party certified. A few nods, a few frowns, tension remained, but resolution was emerging. Global human rights groups issued statements after the event, cautious praise for healing initiatives, calls for vigilant oversight, moderate optimism. Tech media hailed it as the most human version of AI yet and contrasted it with earlier controversies. Markets responded steadily, investors cautious but intrigued. Backstage, Elon watched live feeds from off-site hubs, Tokyo, Lagos, Buenos Aires. The room buzzed as Hesper's healing vertical partners signed MOUs, school districts committed to programs, mental health nonprofits requested expansion. Then Elon addressed his team. This night is only the beginning. We build not just tech, but trust, rights, human agency. The team cheered, exhausted joy, hopeful surrender. Later, in a quiet corner of the auditorium, Elon met Amara again. She handed him a simple bracelet carved from local wood. For hope, she said. Elon nodded, placing it on her wrist, unafraid of emotion. This felt different, tonight, healing and purpose outweighed the past clashes. He believed, perhaps for the first time, that the turning point had arrived, not just in mission, but in global acceptance. Still, the new verticals brought fresh complexity. Partnerships across healthcare, education, law would test governance, funding, technical scalability. Ethical stewards would need to liaise in city councils, parliaments, school boards. Boundaries would require ongoing vigilance. Elon felt it, quietly. There was no grand finale yet, only a new beginning. His final act before leaving the stage was a simple invitation. Join us in writing this next chapter, not as spectators, but as guardians of what humanity becomes. The audience rose again. Tonight the invention, once a made in mind, had become a movement for life. And somewhere in that tide of applause, Elon realized that the true creation wasn't a machine, it was a choice about who we choose to be. In the weeks that followed the global reveal, the world began to weave Hesper into its everyday tapestry, not as a novelty, but as a necessity. Programs proliferated across continents, each guided by the three mission verticals: healing, empowerment, boundaries. In Kigali, Rwanda, medical teams introduced Hesper modules to support postpartum mental health in rural zones. Users noted dramatic reductions in early-onset depression and isolation. In Santiago, Chile, teachers incorporated empowerment decks into classrooms to help bilingual learning and cross-cultural introspection. Test scores rose, but more importantly, students reported greater confidence and emotional clarity. In Helsinki, controlled studies showed first responders using Hesper performed with markedly lower burnout rates and higher situational empathy. Across contexts, impact began accruing, but so did complexity. With expansion came hybrid questions. In Dubai, a wealthy consortium requested a Tier 2 glamour version of Hesper, including enhanced language fluency, negotiation prompts, and charisma tweaks for high-profile professionals. Elon declined sharply. Hesper isn't a personality makeover, it's a restoration tool. The incident clarified ambition lines: healing and empowerment, yes; social advantage, no. Still, emerging regulatory frameworks struggled to define augmentation boundaries. Some countries allowed medical deployments only. Other regions treated any Hesper use as medical device, requiring prescription and training. Over time, code had to adjust to local legislation. Firmware varied according to region-specific rights law built into the device, limiting or opening modules accordingly. Internally, the code base had split significantly, one branch for forgiveness and empathy, another for educational and cognitive scaffolding. Boardrooms debated investment in R&D for a creative boost chip, but Elon vetoed all proposals that didn't align with healing or empowerment. He insisted energy go toward mental health modules, educational access in underserved areas, and research transparency. Amid these institutional shifts, voices with real-world urgency continued to anchor the mission. In Dhaka, girls at a STEM lab used Hesper to overcome cultural barriers and excel in robotics competitions. In Nairobi, farmers synced mental and agricultural rhythms to improve crop yields through cognitive mapping modules. Learning curves and acceptance rates surprised even the most optimistic researchers, with up to 80% sustained daily use in pilot zones. However, the emotional toll of sustaining confidence in Hesper emerged in new form. One research partner in Argentina reported a brainwave pattern dubbed over-optimism fatigue, where users in therapeutic modules reported excessive emotional resilience that undermined realistic coping. Designed to instill hope, it risked undercutting vigilance. Elon confronted the challenge directly: modules would now learn to shape balanced emotional tone, not an always positive one. Engineers created adaptive, emotional equilibrium filters, designed to detect when enhancement risks tipping into denial. On a rare day of reprieve, Elon flew with his team to Stockholm to attend a global health summit on neural tech. He found himself seated beside the World Health Organization Neurotech chair. Their conversation was candid: "You've launched something remarkable, but you must remain iterative. Bodies adapt. Cultures evolve. Neural norms shift." Elon sat quietly. The gravity of stewardship sharpened at scale: staying human meant staying adaptable. Back home, in Austin's lab, scientists logged emergence from early dissociation episodes, moments where users questioned whether decisions felt theirs or prompted. The data was small in numbers, but not negligible. Elon personally convened user circles for feedback. He listened as individuals described the disconcerting sensation of whispering decisions late at night and not being sure they came from them or Hesper. In response, the tech introduced reassertion mode. Users could trace decisions back stepwise and tag them as mine or co-pilot, effectively retraining the model and reinforcing ownership. Amid controversy and iteration, public trust began to solidify. Regulatory bodies across Europe and Asia enacted neural augmentation acts heavily influenced by Hesper Global Alliance standards. Right to disconnect became a legal phrase in legal codes from Canada to Brazil. Neural consent audits became mandatory onboarding steps in institutions offering Hesper. Every once in a while, Elon received letters that reminded him why the mission persisted. One arrived from a father in the Appalachians. His daughter, severely dysgraphic and excluded in school, used Hesper's cognitive scaffolding and emotional pacing modules to finish her first novel. He thanked Elon not for the tech, but for giving her a voice she believed was hers. Another arrived from a retired teacher in Greece describing how Hesper helped him retain warm memories of students he'd lost to illness. The notes hung on a wooden board in Elon's office labeled, "Why?" But even amid these victories, challenges continued. A new hacking group surfaced claiming to offer open-source firmware that bypassed emotional limits. They marketed their version as freedom hacking. Elon's team traced the code and issued legal warnings. He publicly addressed the practice: freedom doesn't mean free from responsibility. Neural freedom without ethics is not freedom, it's exploitation. As neural communities grew, discourse advanced. Universities taught courses on neural coexistence, forums debated digital existentialism, households negotiated Hesper use as part of personal boundaries. The same tool once feared as brain alterer now sat beside pillows in kitchens, used in guided meditation, turned off by midnight. Internally, Musk's team reflected on the evolving relationship between medicine and agency. The modules saving lives were simple, but the hardest lessons about autonomy came from the small adjustments they'd made: reassertion mode, emotional equilibrium, echo limiter, not just features but philosophical commitments. In a final global message delivered via broadcast, Elon spoke across 7 continents. This began as a bold invention. It's now becoming a collective practice. Hesper isn't about replacing humanity, it's about restoring it. But only if we hold the mirror not to control, but to see ourselves, imperfect, evolving, connected. And that requires humility, responsibility, and always, human choice. The first warning signs came quietly, in online forums and social media groups. Users reported subtle feelings of disconnection from reality, like wearing a mask of clarity that masked underlying confusion. While early dissociation episodes had been rare and managed through the reassertion mode, new patterns suggested something more insidious: neural fatigue that couldn't be remedied by toggling controls. A young woman in Denver described it as living 2 lives at once, the real and the programmed. A school counselor in Boston reported a cluster of teenagers showing signs of emotional flattening after prolonged Hesper use. These stories quickly gained traction and stirred public debate, raising questions about whether the technology could be overstimulating or even addictive in new ways. Musk convened an emergency summit at the Austin facility. The team pored over neurological data, psychological reports, and user testimonials. Neuroscientists warned of neural overmodulation, a state where the brain's natural rhythms became entrained to the device's adaptive algorithms, dulling spontaneous emotion and creating a dependency cycle. One expert explained, "The brain is plastic, yes, but it also craves authenticity. When the line between self-generated thought and device-prompted input blurs too much, identity and agency erode." The findings were sobering. Despite safeguards, Hesper's very nature, a powerful interface connecting directly to the mind, posed risks that no code alone could fully prevent. Simultaneously, legal battles erupted in several countries. A coalition of privacy advocates filed lawsuits claiming that Hesper's data architecture, despite encryption and consent protocols, still exposed users to unprecedented surveillance risks. There were allegations of unauthorized third-party access to anonymized datasets and fears that governments might co-opt neural data for control or manipulation. Some politicians seized on the controversies to push back against neural tech entirely, calling for moratoriums and harsher regulations. Media outlets debated fiercely. Was Hesper a technological miracle or a dystopian gateway? Within the company, fractures formed. Some senior engineers pushed for a safe mode, a stripped-down version of Hesper with limited neural access and enforced downtime. Others argued this would compromise the technology's promise and alienate users who had come to rely on its full suite of functions. Elon found himself mediating between innovation zeal and cautious ethics more than ever before. Late nights in the lab were now filled with philosophical discussions as much as technical problem-solving. The question weighed on everyone's minds: how far could one push human-machine integration without losing the essence of humanity? One incident crystallized the dilemma. A promising young programmer, Ava, who had joined the project with dreams of healing minds, suffered a severe psychological episode traced to prolonged Hesper immersion. She described feeling trapped in a recursive feedback loop of enhanced thoughts that blurred her ability to differentiate her own feelings from the device's prompts. After hospitalization, she urged the team to treat the risk seriously, emphasizing the need for comprehensive mental health monitoring and intervention protocols integrated with Hesper's software. Her testimony resonated deeply within the community, sparking calls for independent oversight boards comprising ethicists, clinicians, and former users. Elon responded publicly, acknowledging the challenges candidly for the first time. Technology is never perfect. Neural tech carries risks we must confront openly, not hide behind PR. Our responsibility is to build trust through transparency, humility, and continuous learning. We are committed to making Hesper not just powerful, but safe, for everyone. To address the crises, the company launched Project Clarity, a multidisciplinary initiative focused on refining the user experience to prioritize mental wellness. New features were developed: automatic neural rest periods, more intuitive consent re-verification, and AI-driven anomaly detection that alerted users and clinicians to signs of overuse or distress. User feedback became central to every iteration. Hesper's algorithms were adjusted to better respect emotional boundaries and minimize intrusive prompts. Despite these efforts, public trust wavered. Social movements advocating neural sovereignty grew, calling for the right to remain unaided by mind tech or to opt out entirely without stigma. Protests erupted outside Hesper global offices, demanding transparency and equitable access. Elon attended several town halls, facing tough questions from communities worried about inequality and coercion. Meanwhile, geopolitical tensions complicated matters further. Rival nations accused each other of cyber espionage involving neural tech, and rumors circulated about covert attempts to weaponize interfaces like Hesper for psychological manipulation. Elon found himself in back-channel diplomacy, emphasizing the need for international neural treaties to prevent misuse. The stakes of the technology had outgrown corporate boardrooms and entered the realm of global security. Amid the turmoil, there were moments of profound humanity. In a hospital in Berlin, a terminally ill patient used Hesper to reconnect with estranged family members, sharing memories and forgiveness in his final days. A teacher in New Orleans implemented empowerment modules to help children in trauma-affected neighborhoods regain confidence and emotional resilience. These stories underscored the core promise that had drawn Elon to the project initially: the power of connection and healing. In early morning hours at the Austin lab, Elon paced the sleek hallways, his mind racing through possibilities. He convened an emergency strategy session with his leadership team, calling for unprecedented transparency and community involvement. The days of announcing finished products were over. Now, the company would shift toward co-creation, inviting users, ethicists, clinicians, and policymakers into the design process as equals. To kick off this transformation, Elon launched Hesper Open Dialogue, a global series of live virtual forums where users shared real stories, both triumphant and troubling, and experts discussed safeguards, ethics, and future directions. The forums were raw, unfiltered, and sometimes uncomfortable. Elon himself appeared on several, answering candid questions: how do you ensure Hesper respects who I am? What happens if I want to disconnect forever? Who watches the watchers? These moments humanized the brand and softened skepticism. At the same time, the company overhauled its data governance. All user data would now be stored on decentralized ledgers with cryptographic protections and user-controlled permissions. Third-party auditors, chosen from diverse backgrounds, gained full access to verify compliance and flag anomalies. The right to erase was enshrined. Users could permanently delete all neural interaction histories at will. This radical shift to user sovereignty became a blueprint for neural tech ethics worldwide. On the technical front, Project Clarity's initiatives deepened. Neural wellness monitors, embedded within Hesper devices, tracked subtle markers of fatigue, stress, and identity disruption. When thresholds were reached, users received gentle prompts to take breaks, engage offline activities, or consult professionals. Reassertion mode was enhanced to include identity journaling, allowing users to log emotional states and decision ownership, building personalized mental maps over time. These innovations reflected a new philosophy: not just augmenting the mind, but caring for it. Education campaigns rolled out globally, aiming to demystify neural tech. Schools taught neural literacy, equipping students to understand Hesper's benefits and risks with critical thinking. Community workshops fostered dialogues about consent, boundaries, and equitable access. The company partnered with nonprofits to subsidize devices for marginalized groups, aiming to narrow the digital and neural divide that had begun to surface. Elon's personal commitment deepened. He engaged with small groups of longtime users who had experienced distress or loss of agency, listening deeply to their experiences. Their stories shaped ongoing updates and inspired new ethical guardrails. Musk often reflected privately, if this tool is to be part of human evolution, it must evolve with us, not override us. International diplomacy intensified. Elon participated in the drafting of the Global Neural Rights Charter, a pioneering treaty setting baseline protections and standards for neurotechnology use. It codified principles like informed consent, right to disconnect, privacy by design, and collective stewardship. The treaty was signed by dozens of nations, creating a new legal framework that elevated the conversation from innovation versus caution to mutual responsibility. Within the company, culture shifted markedly. Teams integrated ethicists and psychologists alongside engineers and developers. Cross-disciplinary collaboration became the norm, breaking down silos. Instead of racing to market, they pursued iterative cycles rooted in empathy and evidence. The once singular vision expanded into a shared mission. Despite these efforts, challenges remained. Some users resisted limits, seeking unregulated, freedom-hacking modifications that threatened safety. Elon's team fought an uphill battle to educate and reclaim community trust. Cybersecurity arms races intensified as threats evolved. Yet the company refused to retreat into closed systems or corporate secrecy, choosing openness as a strategic and moral imperative. In one notable success, a young woman named Lila, who had struggled with severe PTSD, spoke publicly at a forum. She described how Hesper's recalibrated modules had given her back control without erasing trauma, a delicate balance she hadn't thought possible. Her testimony galvanized support and renewed hope across fractured communities. The path ahead was still steep and uncertain. Yet for the first time in months, Elon believed the project was not just surviving, it was growing into the kind of future he had dreamed of, one where technology and humanity advance together, each respecting the other's limits and potential. Months after launching Hesper Open Dialogue, Elon saw early signs of renewal in public sentiment. The forums had become vibrant spaces of collaboration, with users, clinicians, and developers co-creating personalized modules that honored diverse cultures, values, and life experiences. A breakthrough emerged: adaptive resonance technology, an AI-driven system that learned not just the user's preferences but their emotional rhythms and boundaries, constantly calibrating interventions to feel less intrusive and more intuitive. This technology was more than code, it was a philosophy that respected the sacred space of human consciousness. In Austin's labs, engineers worked side by side with anthropologists and philosophers to deepen Hesper's cultural sensitivity. Neural responses to empathy and narrative were fine-tuned to reflect global diversity, allowing users from Tokyo to Tulsa to experience resonance that honored their unique identities. This bespoke approach opened new markets and, more importantly, reinforced the principle that neural enhancement must be pluralistic, not uniform. At the same time, Elon expanded the Hesper team to include neural ambassadors, individuals tasked with traveling to underserved communities worldwide, listening to lived experiences, and bringing back insights to guide product evolution. One such ambassador, Maya, a former social worker from Chicago, returned from a rural community in Peru with stories of how simple healing modules had restored peace to families fractured by generational trauma. Her report inspired the launch of Project Roots, aimed at integrating ancestral healing practices with cutting-edge neural tech, blending tradition and innovation. The company also embraced an open-source initiative, selecting key portions of the Hesper codebase for public collaboration. This unprecedented transparency invited independent researchers to audit algorithms, propose enhancements, and identify biases. Elon's vision was clear: only through openness could neural tech earn lasting legitimacy. Trust is earned, he told his team, not imposed. Simultaneously, legal frameworks matured. The Global Neural Rights Charter gained traction in policy circles and was ratified by additional countries. Its success paved the way for international neural ethics conferences, where scientists, ethicists, and lawmakers convened regularly to address emergent issues. These gatherings fostered a shared vocabulary around consent, agency, and responsibility, helping to diffuse geopolitical tensions and build consensus on standards. But innovation wasn't without risk. As adaptive resonance technology rolled out, a new challenge emerged. Some users reported mirror effects, moments when Hesper's empathetic tuning caused intense emotional experiences that overwhelmed their coping capacities. These episodes sparked new debates. How much emotional amplification was too much? Elon convened another cross-disciplinary panel, and engineers introduced resonance dampeners, and optional, emotional bandwidth, settings, empowering users to tailor intensity. Meanwhile, Elon's public appearances took on a new tone, reflective, collaborative, less about grand announcements and more about shared journeys. He spoke at universities, town halls, and international summits, emphasizing the ethical stewardship of neural tech. Our role, he said, is not to control minds, but to awaken potential, responsibly, humbly, and inclusively. Back in Austin, the company's culture flourished under these values. Cross-functional teams thrived, blending technical rigor with humanistic insight. Regular user immersion workshops allowed employees to experience Hesper firsthand, fostering empathy and insight. The company no longer saw itself as simply a tech firm, but as a guardian of human dignity in the digital age. One landmark moment came when Hesper was adopted in rehabilitation centers for veterans with traumatic brain injuries. Here, healing modules paired with adaptive resonance gently restored cognitive function and emotional balance, helping individuals reclaim independence and purpose. Veterans testified to Hesper's role in their recovery, describing it as a partner, not a prosthetic. This success story elevated Hesper's status from novelty to vital healthcare tool. As the year progressed, Elon reflected on the arc of the journey. What had begun as a bold technological gambit had matured into a nuanced ecosystem of care, collaboration, and co-evolution. The project's greatest lesson was clear: technology must serve humanity's complexity, not simplify it. The chapter closed with Elon preparing a keynote address titled "The Promise of Human-Centric Neural Tech," where he would outline a vision for the next decade, one rooted in adaptability, ethics, and global partnership. Hesper's story was no longer about disruption alone, but about resilience and renewal. He began by recounting Hesper's origins, how it was born from a desire to heal, empower, and connect people beyond the limitations of traditional technology. Elon spoke openly about the early challenges, the neural fatigue, ethical dilemmas, and trust crises that threatened to derail the vision. These trials, he said, were not failures but essential crucibles that forged stronger principles. Elon introduced the core pillars guiding Hesper's next phase: empathy, agency, and equity. He emphasized that neural tech must not only be powerful but deeply respectful of individual autonomy. The new adaptive resonance algorithms, he explained, were designed to honor users' emotional boundaries while enhancing their capacity for self-understanding and growth. Audience members nodded as he unveiled a series of real-world applications, neural modules tailored for education, mental health, and community healing. One story resonated deeply: a teacher in Detroit using Hesper to help students with learning disabilities unlock new pathways for comprehension and confidence. Another highlighted a rural clinic in Kenya where healing modules provided trauma relief to survivors of conflict. These examples illustrated Hesper's evolution from gadget to lifeline. However, Elon did not shy away from the ongoing ethical complexities. He acknowledged that technology, no matter how refined, could never replace human judgment and care. Neural tech is a tool, he stressed, not a panacea. Its power lies in the hands of those who wield it with wisdom and compassion. Following the keynote, Elon engaged in a moderated panel with ethicists and neuroscientists, exploring the limits of neural enhancement and the importance of safeguards. Questions from the audience reflected both hope and caution. Could Hesper deepen human connection without eroding privacy? Would it widen inequalities or help bridge them? Elon's answers balanced optimism with realism, underscoring the shared responsibility to steer innovation toward inclusion and respect. Meanwhile, back at Hesper Global headquarters, internal initiatives accelerated. The company launched a Neural Stewardship Council, comprising diverse stakeholders tasked with overseeing development, monitoring societal impacts, and advising on emerging challenges. This council became a model for other tech firms grappling with similar dilemmas. Elon's leadership style had evolved. No longer the lone visionary commanding the room, he fostered collective wisdom and humility, recognizing that neural tech's future belonged to a global community. He mentored younger leaders, encouraging curiosity tempered by ethical reflection. Amid these strides, Hesper's user base diversified dramatically. From entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley to farmers in India, from artists in Paris to elders in New Zealand, people found unique ways to integrate Hesper into their lives. Stories emerged of people rediscovering joy, creativity, and connection, each narrative weaving a richer tapestry of what it meant to be human in a neural age. Yet challenges persisted. Hackers and rogue developers sought to exploit vulnerabilities, prompting continuous vigilance and rapid response teams. The company invested heavily in cybersecurity and user education, emphasizing that neural tech's promise was inseparable from trust and safety. Internationally, Elon worked closely with governments to harmonize regulations and promote equitable access. Efforts to reduce the neural digital divide gained momentum, with philanthropic initiatives supplying devices to underserved populations and funding community training programs. In a quiet moment at the lab, Elon gazed at a holographic projection of a user's neural feedback loop, a dynamic dance of signals representing hope, fear, resilience, and curiosity. He smiled, knowing that Hesper's greatest creation was not a machine, but the collective human spirit it had awakened. Businesses embraced Hesper to enhance creativity, collaboration, and empathy among teams. In Silicon Valley, startups integrated adaptive resonance modules to foster innovation by aligning diverse minds toward shared goals. CEOs reported breakthroughs in conflict resolution and decision-making, crediting the technology with bridging communication gaps that had long hindered progress. Yet corporate use sparked debate about consent and autonomy. How voluntary was neural enhancement in competitive environments? Elon's team responded by reinforcing user protections, ensuring clear opt-in policies and the right to disconnect without repercussion. Education systems worldwide also transformed. Schools implemented Hesper-assisted learning tailored to individual cognitive styles, helping students overcome barriers and discover passions. Teachers found new ways to connect emotionally with students, deepening engagement and empathy. However, educators cautioned against over-reliance, emphasizing the need for human mentorship alongside technology. This balance became a central theme in educational reforms inspired by Hesper's potential. Social dynamics evolved as well. Neural connectivity fostered deeper understanding across cultural and generational divides, enabling people to share emotions and memories in ways previously unimaginable. Families separated by distance used Hesper to maintain intimate bonds, while communities healing from trauma accessed collective support through shared neural experiences. Yet these advances raised philosophical questions about privacy, identity, and the limits of empathy. Was there a risk of losing individuality in the flood of shared consciousness? Elon's public dialogues engaged these dilemmas thoughtfully, urging caution and respect. Healthcare saw remarkable breakthroughs. Beyond mental health applications, Hesper modules aided physical rehabilitation, pain management, and neuroplasticity enhancement. Patients with stroke, paralysis, or chronic pain reported improved outcomes, rekindling hope for those long marginalized by conventional medicine. Healthcare providers integrated Hesper into holistic treatment plans, blending cutting-edge technology with compassionate care. Amid these shifts, new artistic expressions flourished. Musicians, writers, and visual artists used Hesper to tap directly into emotional currents and collective experiences, creating immersive works that transcended traditional media. Virtual and augmented reality platforms integrated neural feedback, crafting multisensory narratives that invited audiences into shared emotional journeys. These innovations expanded the boundaries of creativity and connection. However, as neural tech permeated daily life, concerns about dependency and authenticity grew louder. Critics warned of emotional outsourcing, where people might rely excessively on technology to regulate feelings or mediate relationships. Philosopher-ethicists debated whether neural enhancements risked diluting the rawness that gave human experiences meaning. These debates underscored the need for ongoing ethical vigilance and education. Elon remained deeply engaged with these cultural currents. He championed initiatives promoting neural mindfulness, encouraging users to cultivate awareness of when and how to use technology mindfully, preserving moments of solitude and self-reflection. Workshops and digital retreats offered spaces for disconnecting and grounding, counterbalancing the immersive pull of neural connectivity. International collaborations flourished. Governments, NGOs, and tech companies formed alliances to share best practices, develop inclusive policies, and address disparities in access. Elon's vision of a global neural ecosystem took shape, not as a monolith but as a mosaic of interconnected yet diverse cultures, values, and aspirations. In the background, research continued into the long-term neurological and psychological effects of sustained neural interface use. Early findings suggested that when balanced thoughtfully, neural technology could enhance cognitive flexibility, emotional resilience, and social cohesion. Yet scientists cautioned against complacency, highlighting the need for lifelong monitoring and adaptive safeguards. Despite widespread benefits, fractures appeared. Some users reported neurological fatigue and emotional overload, even with advanced safeguards in place. The intense connectivity sometimes blurred boundaries between self and other, leading to confusion, identity crises, and social withdrawal. Mental health professionals noted an uptick in cases where individuals struggled to reintegrate after prolonged neural immersion. These phenomena sparked urgent calls for deeper research and nuanced understanding. On the societal level, disparities in access and digital literacy threatened to widen existing inequalities. While many thrived with Hesper's enhancements, marginalized populations risked exclusion, exacerbating socioeconomic divides. Activists demanded accelerated efforts to democratize access, and governments debated regulations balancing innovation with equity. The corporate world wrestled with ethical dilemmas. Some organizations pushed for mandatory neural augmentation to boost productivity, raising alarms about consent and worker rights. Labor unions and human rights groups mobilized, advocating for clear legal protections and the right to opt out without penalty. These debates spilled into international forums, prompting new treaties and guidelines to safeguard autonomy in the workplace. Meanwhile, hackers and bad actors intensified efforts to exploit neural interfaces for malicious ends, stealing data, manipulating emotions, or disrupting networks. Despite sophisticated defenses, cybersecurity incidents prompted fears about the vulnerability of minds connected through Hesper. Elon invested heavily in security innovations, forming rapid response teams and collaborating with global agencies to counter emerging threats. Within Hesper Global, internal tensions emerged as well. The weight of responsibility bore heavily on employees who had once dreamed of revolutionizing human potential but now grappled with the complex realities and unintended harms. Open forums and support systems were established to foster dialogue, resilience, and ethical accountability. Amid these challenges, a pivotal incident shook the community, a high-profile case where a user's neural data was breached and weaponized in a political manipulation campaign. The event sparked outrage and grief, thrusting neural privacy into the spotlight. Governments convened emergency summits to strengthen protections, and Elon publicly apologized, reaffirming the company's commitment to transparency and vigilance. This reckoning led to a cultural shift, from unbridled enthusiasm to cautious, critical engagement. Users became more discerning, demanding clear boundaries, informed consent, and robust support. Educational initiatives emphasized digital and neural literacy, empowering people to navigate this new terrain wisely. Elon's leadership adapted. He embraced humility and openness, acknowledging that neural technology's complexity defied simple answers. "Our creation is a mirror," he said, reflecting both our highest aspirations and our deepest fears. It is up to us, collectively, to shape what that reflection becomes. As the world stood at this crossroads, Elon Musk and the global community prepared to write the next chapter, not just for Hesper, but for the future of human connection itself. In the wake of the crises, Elon spearheaded the formation of the Global Neural Alliance, a coalition of governments, corporations, communities, and users united to govern neural technology ethically and inclusively. This alliance established transparent standards for development, consent, privacy, and equity, ensuring that Hesper's evolution reflected collective values. The alliance's open forums became platforms for dialogue and continuous improvement, embodying the spirit of cooperation Elon had championed. Technologically, Hesper embraced modularity and personalization like never before. Users could choose not only which neural enhancements to adopt but how and when to engage with them, empowering agency over integration. New mindful mode settings allowed for regular digital detoxes, fostering mental well-being and grounding. These features celebrated the human need for balance, recognizing that technology should serve life, not dominate it. Communities flourished through shared neural experiences designed to nurture empathy and healing. Multi-generational storytelling projects wove personal and cultural narratives into collective memory, bridging divides and honoring heritage. Remote and underserved populations accessed Hesper through subsidized programs, narrowing the digital neural divide and expanding the circle of inclusion. Elon's vision of a connected global family began to feel tangible. In education, Hesper modules became trusted companions, adapting curricula to diverse learners while preserving the irreplaceable role of teachers as mentors and guides. Schools embraced hybrid models blending technology with human wisdom, fostering creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. Students learn not just facts but how to live meaningfully in a rapidly changing world. Healthcare continued to integrate Hesper thoughtfully. Patients and practitioners co-designed treatment plans that honored individual needs and preferences. Neural tech supported not only physical recovery but emotional resilience, helping people navigate the complexities of modern life with renewed strength. Stories abounded of lives transformed, pain alleviated, and hope restored. Culturally, artists and creators pushed boundaries, blending neural feedback with immersive media to craft experiences that touched hearts and minds deeply. The arts became a fertile ground for exploring identity, connection, and the human spirit, reminding all that technology was a canvas for expression, not a cage. Elon, now reflecting on years of triumphs and trials, spoke with quiet pride and humility. Hesper's journey has taught us that technology's greatest promise lies not in what it can do for us, but what it enables us to become. It is a mirror, yes, but also a window. Through it, we glimpse a future shaped by empathy, courage, and shared humanity. The story closed with a vivid scene, Elon walking through a bustling park where people of all ages and backgrounds used Hesper seamlessly in their daily lives, learning, creating, healing, and connecting. Children played neural-enhanced games that fostered cooperation, elders shared memories in vibrant communal webs, and strangers met with instant understanding through shared emotional resonance. The air buzzed not just with data, but with hope. This final chapter underscored a profound life lesson, that progress, at its best, is a journey of growth and grace, where innovation honors the sacred complexity of the human heart. Elon Musk's game-changing creation had sparked a new beginning, not only in technology, but in how humanity chose to embrace its future together. Life, the narrative concluded, is full of surprises, but connection will always lead the way. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?